pronouns, and if you would like, you can add your pronouns into your names like we have. This is a project for our class for our GC2Y called Sex and Resistance. And it's our topic on Trans Lives Matter. And this project, we are wanting to celebrate other famous or well-known trans people. And yeah, so we'll start our presentation.
Okay, so first we will just go over a definition of what transgender means. Also, if you have any questions, just type them in the chat, and Natalie will read them out and we can answer them. So transgender is an umbrella term for peoples whose gender identity and or gender expression is different from the cultural expectations based on the sex they were assigned at birth. And being transgender does not imply any specific sexual orientation. That's a completely separate thing. And being cisgender is a term that's used to describe a person whose gender identity aligns with those typically associated with the sex assigned to them at birth. So we have this little graphic, that's the gender unicorn. It explains all aspects of identity, but in this presentation, we're just specifically talking about gender identity because cisgender people and transgender people can have a variety of different sexual orientations and romantic orientations, and also gender expression is varied among gender identities. So yeah, hopefully that helps explain a little bit of the terms we'll be using.
Okay, hey guys, my name is Taylor. My pronouns are she and her. So I kind of wanted to introduce you guys to what International Trans Day of Visibility is. So today's for celebrating transgender people everywhere and raising awareness. We want to celebrate and support trans people through all of their accomplishments and contributions to society. We also want to use this opportunity to spread awareness of the work that still needs to be done to achieve trans equality and show people how they can help and receive resources. So throughout the world today, there are many marches and events happening to take a stand and celebrate transgender people, which is really cool. And like you can find those kinds of like pictures and videos of the marches that went on like everywhere. And I know there was a ton of Facebook Lives that I saw today as well. But we have this little video that is a really cool representation of Trans Day of Visibility that we will show you guys.
Transgender people don't live here.
I've never met anyone who's transgender.
I swear I don't know someone who's transgender.
Transgender and non-binary people like me hear this all the time.
But according to the HRC Foundation, there are more than 2 million transgender people in the United States.
We live in every community across this country.
You might be surprised to hear that there are more transgender and non-binary people in the United States than there are
Starbucks,
McDonald's, and Walmart locations combined.
In fact, if you put us all together,
there'd be more non-binary and transgender folks than the populations of DC,
or Nebraska,
or Maine,
or Idaho,
or West Virginia.
Rosen might me laugh. I said, Brendan Rosen might be
population of trans folks in the U.S.
So here are a few things to keep in mind.
You don't always know when a person is trans.
But we're your neighbors,
your co-workers,
your students,
your customers,
and even your friends and family.
We exist in every culture, todas las culturas, throughout human history.
And while we're more visible than ever before,
sometimes you just don't see us.
So when you hear about politicians pushing for discriminatory bills,
know this, these bills address problems that aren't even real.
Problems that don't actually exist.
But we do.
We do.
We do.
We do.
We do.
We do.
We do. We do.
And we need your support.
Okay, so that was just a sweet video to get us started. But now I will turn it over to Karsten.
Okay, so I hope y'all enjoyed that video. And so like they said today, my name's Karsten and my pronouns are she and her. But like we said today, like our event is about celebrating some noteworthy trans people. And so here's our few that we have kind of highlighted on and want to share with y'all today. So up first we have Elliot Page. Elliot Page is probably more known among our generation. Elliot Page is a binary trans man. He was born on February 21st, 1987. Pronouns he uses are he and they. Nationality is Canadian, and he is an actor and producer. He's been in many movies such as Pit Pony, X-Men, Inception, Juno, countless others. And he's also been nominated for Oscars from his works in Juno and X-Men, Days of Futures Past. Up next, we have Marsha P Johnson, gender nonconforming, born August 45 and died on July 6, 1992. Nationality is American, pronouns are she and her. And so Marsha Pay It No Mind Johnson was a drag queen and prominent LGBT plus rights activist. She is well known for her involvement in Stonewall Uprising 1969, as well as being a founder of both the Gay Liberation Front and STAR. Now we have Ruth Baldacchino, is gender queer, dates born on December 1979. His nationality is Maltese. The pronouns are they and them. And the description is Ruth Baldacchino is an intersex and LGBT activist and former co-secretary general of the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans, and Intersex Association. They are involved with many organizations and charities that fight for the rights of LGBT individuals and sex workers. Now we have Chella Mann, is genderqueer, born on November 26, 1998. Nationality is American. The pronouns he goes by are he and him. And Chella is an artist, actor, model, and prominent LGBTQ plus activist. He talks about his experiences with being deaf, genderqueer, and Jewish. He is known for his roles of Jericho in DC's Universe Titans.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Duncan. My pronouns are she, they. And before we get to these next two people, we wanted to give a quick disclaimer. These next two people are Indigenous, and their gender identity directly correlates to their culture. We feel it's important to highlight them because people like this often aren't included. But it's worth noting that Two-Spirit and other Native identities are their own separate thing outside the LGBTQ community and do not reflect westernized concepts of gender. Now we have a video here as well to give a brief overview of what Two-Spirit is, and then we'll jump into the next couple people.
Two-Spirit one more time. Though the label has only been used since the 90s, the concept of the Two-Spirit is something Indigenous groups have identified with for centuries. But what does Two-Spirit actually mean, and where does it come from? So what is Two-Spirit? It's an umbrella term that bridges Indigenous and Western understandings of gender and sexuality. You may recognize it as the 2 that sometimes appears on the end of LGBTQ2. There are many definitions and understandings of two-spirit, and each is nation-specific. The term was intentionally introduced by Native people with the goal of finding common ground and helping educate about traditional teachings in a contemporary context. The Two-Spirit Society of Denver offers the following definition. Two-spirit refers to another gender role believed to be common among most, if not all, First Peoples of Turtle Island, North America, one that had a proper and accepted place within Native societies. This acceptance was rooted in the spiritual teachings that say all life is sacred. So how did the term Two-Spirit first come about? In 1990, in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, at the 3rd annual Native American Gay and Lesbian Gathering, the term Two-Spirit was proposed and affirmed by consensus. The word was a potential solution to what Native scholars and activists called the problem of naming, or making the many different sexual and gender identities that fall under the Two-Spirit umbrella legible across Native and non-Native cultures alike. For example, to illustrate the diversity of meanings that Two-Spirit contains, consider the following. In Lakota, the word winkte means to be as a woman and refers to two-souled Lakota people who transgress boundaries of gender from what may be considered male to female. In Dene, nadlehe means those who transform and refers to one of 4 separate genders: masculine-feminine, masculine-masculine, feminine-masculine, and feminine-feminine. Each gender has its own word in the Dene language. And those are just 2 nation-specific examples. There are so many more. Each nation's understanding of gender and sexual diversity is different and grounded in specific spiritual beliefs. Although all nations don't have a concept of Two-Spirit people, across those indigenous nations that do, Two-Spirit people were historically held in high regard and often considered sacred or divine, holding important positions like matchmakers, medicine people, or warriors on the front lines of battle. Many Two-Spirit people perform roles traditionally assigned to both men and women. Witwa, a famous Two-Spirit of the Zuni or Ihamana, was known to take part in masculine tribal matters and feminine tribal matters, and was even sent as an official Zuni delegate to Washington, D.C. Part of the reason Two-Spirit was adopted at the 1990 conference was because much of the written record on the indigenous nations of North America begins with European contact. For instance, the writings of Jesuit priests from the 1600s contain references to bertachés, which means kept boy in French, to refer to those who embodied both male and female genders. Writings often focus negatively on perceived cross-dressing among the Anishinaabe. The term is not only inaccurate in that it projects a European understanding of gender, but is widely considered pejorative by natives. Two-Spirit was an attempt at self-determination across linguistic barriers, because the existing language, foreign and imposed violently on the indigenous peoples of North America, was both offensive and deeply colonial in its gaze. European colonizers imposed homophobia, rigid binary gender roles, and misogyny under the guise of civilizing indigenous people through the Christian tradition in residential schools and beyond. As a result, indigenous people were robbed not only of their land, but of their spiritual traditions and way of life regarding Two-Spirit people. Many nations came to forbid and punish Two-Spirit unions and self-expression. As recently as 2004, Kathy Reynolds and Don Kinley, 2 Cherokee women in Tulsa, Oklahoma, attempted to marry under tribal law, setting off a convoluted legal battle with serious political and social implications. The 2 were thrust into the spotlight against their wishes and became instant public symbols of the battle for Two-Spirit rights under tribal law. The Cherokee tribe is the 2nd largest in the U.S. Although they were granted the right to marry, the decision to issue them a marriage license was soon challenged and led to a tribal law declaring that a union was to be between a man and a woman. Eventually, in 2016, the law was overturned. By that time, a wider cultural shift had taken place, both outside of and within the Cherokee Nation. In recent years, many Native people are returning to their Two-Spirit traditions as a way to heal from the injustices the American colonial project has visited upon their ancestors and traditions. In 2011, the first known U.S. Two-Spirit powwow was organized by the Bay Area American Indian Two-Spirits. Since then, powwows honoring Two-Spirits have been held in Montana and Kansas. And in March of 2017, the largest powwow in the US, the Gathering of Nations, honored Two-Spirit people during its grand entry. Two-Spirit identity is resilient and precious. It has survived centuries of colonial violence and prejudice. These sacred ways of knowing live on amongst Native youth seeking to know more about themselves, elders who have kept the traditions alive in spite of the odds, and anyone in between. It should go without saying, but Two-Spirit is not a poetic way for non-Native LGBTQ people to express themselves. We're looking at you, Jason Mraz. It is, however, a sacred tradition among the first peoples of this land called Turtle Island that all of its inhabitants should know about and respect.
Okay, so now that we have a little bit more context as to what these identities mean, we can start talking about people who fall into this category. First, we have Richard Laflatune, who identifies as Two-Spirit. I believe he uses he, him pronouns. He is American. He was born in 1960, and he is an author, community organizer, an activist for Native LGBTQ plus people. He helped organize the first annual International Two-Spirit Gathering and co-founded the Two-Spirit Press Room, which is a source for Native LGBT media and cultural literacy. And then the second person we have is Yuki Kihara, who identifies as Fa'afafine. She is Samoan. She was born in 1975, and she is an artist who is inspired by a lot of traditional Samoan art. A lot of her work talks about political and social issues in Pacific culture, and also talks about Fa'afafine as a concept. Fa'afafine, for those who don't know, is part of the Samoan gender spectrum. Then we have Fey Hernandez. They are non-binary. They are a Mexican visual artist, poet, writer, and healer. They are also the board president of Gender Justice in Los Angeles and have published a series of poetry called Hood Criatura. I actually visited their website and I like their art a lot. It's very nice. Yeah. And then the last person we have is Angel Hayes. They identify as agender. They are American. They were born on July 10th, 1991, and they are a rapper from Detroit who has released several albums and was nominated for the BBC's Sound of 2013 poll.
Okay, so for our project, we also wanted to reach out to some local trans organizations, organizations that help the LGBT community, specifically trans people, and just sort of show their resources and also kind of talk to them about the trans experience. So, oh, also I forgot to introduce myself earlier. I'm Natalie and I use she, her pronouns, by the way. So the first organization that we reached out to was the Feminist Women's Health Center in Atlanta. Most of the organizations are in Atlanta because Milledgeville is kind of a small town, so that was about as local as we could get. But yeah, basically the purpose of their organization is to provide reproductive health care, sexual health and wellness services. They provide abortion care. They help protect and expand access to healthcare for trans people, which is really important because, I mean, you can even see it in like some recent laws that have passed. It's very, it's a lot more difficult for trans people to get healthcare, like affordable and equitable, and, you know, nice healthcare than it is for cisgender people. They also focus on other minorities who need healthcare, like people of color. Then we asked them, like, what sort of impact do they think they make on LGBTQ plus community? They said that they address gaps in trans healthcare, just sort of in general, just helping overall, like more trans, helping more trans people get the healthcare that they need. And then they also have a thing called the Trans Health Initiative, which is sort of like a practice that they do where they help provide sensitive, friendly, and affordable healthcare to various trans people, gender nonconforming people, and intersex people in various southern states. And then we also asked them what, do they have any other resources that we could talk about? And they said the organization La Gender Incorporation is an organization in Atlanta, and they provide housing for homeless trans people. The website's right there. And then the website for the Feminist Women's Health Center is also down below. And then the next organization I talked to is kind of two parts. I talked to this woman named Lupa Brandt, and she was a woman I interviewed, and she's the community outreach chair for Transcending Barriers Atlanta. Basically, the purpose of their organization is they help educate people in the trans community on different life skills. So things like how to make a good resume and like how to apply for jobs, stuff like that. They help with name change assistance. So if you don't know, many trans people have a thing called a dead name, which is basically like the name that was assigned to them at birth and the name that people used for them before they transitioned, and they chose a new name that fits themselves and their gender identity. But frequently, trans people, like, their dead name is on official government documents like driver's license, birth certificates, things like that. So Transcending Barriers helps trans people like go through the process of changing that. They also do lots of charity work. They do clothing drives, which is very important for trans people because they want to have like gender affirming clothing, so they can dress in a way that like makes them feel confident in their gender identity. And also sometimes they provide trans individuals with things like food or cell phones or even housing. They also help with medical processes. So Lupa was telling me how she actually, she helped write like a sort of script, you could call it, of like rules and like regulations and different practices for medical professionals, like doctors and nurses, on how to like talk and interact with trans and gender nonconforming patients. Because sometimes people in the healthcare field like don't really know how to do that. So that's very helpful. And then also sometimes they fund operations. And then the impact they make on the LGBTQ plus community. She said that they mainly aim to uplift and empower the community. They also help protect the community from COVID, recently, and also HIV, because there's a lot of overlap between people who have HIV and people in the LGBT community and trans people. Their organization is an abolitionist for the prison complex. Prison is already hard enough. It's even harder when you're a trans person. So they kind of help raise awareness to that. And then they also fight poverty and homeless in the community. And then the woman I talked to, Lupa, is the community outreach person for this organization, but the actual co-founders are Zahara Green and Diane Kettle. And then I asked Lupa what would be like some advice to give to cis people on how to be a better ally to the trans community. And she kind of summed it up in the phrase, if you don't know, just ask. So that could be something as simple as, asking someone's pronouns, or it could be something like, asking how can we help you in the fight for equality, things like that. And the website is at the bottom as well. And then the next organization, Lupa actually co-founded it with her husband, and it's called the Phoenix Transition Program. And they work internationally, not just in the Atlanta, Georgia area. They're kind of a new organization, so they just started in June of 2020. And they also work on grants and donations, just like Transcending Barriers. And she told me that mainly they work to fill in gaps that Transcending Barriers doesn't fill, to help the trans community. And then she also told me a specific instance of how last year during Thanksgiving they did they sent out like 10 to 15 meals to different like people and their families through like online grocery orders, and they did that to people like in various parts of the country. So that was pretty cool. They also have a thing they do called Phoenix Dreams, which basically they help trans people like start businesses. Like trans people who want to be entrepreneurs, they help them start a business. They help them like register, the building or the, like license to start a business and stuff. They help them get a new name because, like I said earlier, a lot of trans people, sometimes their dead name is still on their government documents. So they help with that so they can have the right name under their business. And then they also design like a whole, amazing website for their business. And they help one person per month. And then they also recently started doing surgery fundraisers. They help 6 individuals with that throughout the year. And they do gender affirming surgery. So that could be top or bottom surgery. So that's what they do. And their website is also down on the right. Also, these are some resources just about the things that we talked about. I can also copy and paste them in the chat if that would be helpful. So if you're interested in taking action or learning more about anything we discussed today, here's a bunch of links. It talks about how to be a better ally to the trans community, different terms that were used today and like what they mean. And some terms that we didn't use are on these websites. Also the organizations that we discussed, and then our website for our class is there.
Hey guys, my name is Carson and my pronouns are also she and her. And to kind of like wrap up what we've been talking about today and kind of get you guys a little involved, we wanted to have a few discussion questions. If you want to turn your mics on or put in the chat whatever your answers are, whatever you're comfortable with. But for our first question, I just want to know, like before today, did you know anything about when or even what Trans Day of Visibility was? Did you have any knowledge on it? Anything at all? So like I said, if you don't want to turn your mics on, put them in the chat. Feel free to answer. Okay, so Courtney said that she had no previous knowledge about it. And to be honest, I didn't really either before this class and before this project. I didn't really have a lot of knowledge on what it was or even when it was. So this has kind of opened my eyes a lot to it, and especially working with the Women's Center has been really helpful. Has anybody had any knowledge about it before today? Okay.
All right, so one of our participants said, my brother is trans, so I'm a huge supporter of him. That's wonderful to hear. Another person said, I knew a little bit about it, what it was, because a lot of celebrities tend to post about it a lot, but didn't know the date. And I can actually agree with you. Before doing all of our research and stuff, I did not know when it was. So someone else said, I knew it was a thing, I just didn't know what it represented / what was about. So I'm glad you came. And then Miss Melissa said, I did. And then another person said, I didn't know about the day the day before yesterday, I didn't know of all the resources for Georgia College, but I do know there are accommodations. And then someone said, I'm trans. Well, we're glad to have you here. And then another person said, I didn't consider myself trans or cis and just don't know about it. And well, we're glad you're here as well. Non-binary, there it is. Thank you.
Okay, so our next question for you guys would be, even if you didn't know about what Trans Day Visibility was, did you know about any of the resources that our school has to offer, or what you can do to kind of get involved with everything? So yeah, put your answers in the chat.
Miss Stephanie said your interviews with local organizations were very helpful. So that's awesome. Another participant said, I did the STAR Ally training, which was awesome. Oh, that's very good. And then another person said, yes, I know they have clubs and stuff. Yeah, you can find a bunch of stuff just at Georgia College, which is really awesome. I figured the Women's Center had resources, but didn't know what resources they had. Well, thank you for being here.
Okay, our last question for you guys is there anybody that we have not mentioned so far that you feel we should celebrate, or that you know of that we can celebrate today? If so, please send it in the chat.
Would anyone from the Women's Center like to talk about some of the resources that they have on campus while we have this opportunity?
Sure. So a lot of you mentioned some of them, but hi everyone, my name is Melissa Garrier. I work at the Women's Center and with LGBTQ+ programs. My pronouns are she, her. So some of you all mentioned some things. We've got a great student organization, our Pride Alliance. They meet weekly. They're great. They have a drag show tomorrow if it's virtual, if that's something that you're interested in. But they do a lot of other kind of events throughout the semester too. Of course, there's LGBTQ+ programs. We also do a lot of educational events, programs throughout the year, including our STAR Ally training, which STAR stands for Support, Teach, Affirm, Respect. And it's basically an LGBTQ+ ally 101, how to support, LGBT folks. So you can sign up. We usually have about one of those a month. We have one in April. It's almost at capacity. So if you're interested in joining us, feel free, but know that we have a few spaces left. As far as resources for students, we will work with folks in housing to kind of figure out what an affirming housing situation might look like for students that are living on campus. We can help facilitate with the registrar's office what is called by the school a preferred name change, so students can put on record the name that they go by, and that can be reflected then in any kind of internal faced things, so like within Georgia View and on class rosters and things like that, and email addresses, and then students can also get that name printed on their Bobcat card. So that is something that allows trans students to feel a little bit more comfortable in the classroom, hopefully, and across campus. And then we also have on campus a lot of single stall restrooms, which can sometimes just feel more comfortable for trans and non-binary students and just people in general, right? But there's we're working on doing a map, but there's over 30 of them on campus. So I challenge you all to kind of take stock, know where they are, because that can always be something that is helpful to know. Yeah, I think those are the big ones.
And Miss Jennifer just kind of reiterated that in a message that she put in the chat if anyone is interested in those resources. someone said that they liked learning about or they wanted to celebrate Brandon Tina. And if anyone doesn't know Brandon Tina's story, he has actually a movie about him, which is really awesome if you want to check that out. It's called Boys Don't Cry, and he's awesome, and he definitely should be celebrated.
Is there anyone here that has any questions about our presentation or like to discuss something specific?
So I guess we kind of just wanted to do one little activity at the end to kind of I guess end us here or close to end us here. And we're gonna try to be creating like a word cloud. So I'll make it full screen. So if you text Taylor Casey 615 to this 37607 number at the top of the screen, if you kind of want to make like just a one word response to like what do you think, like what was your, I know it's hard to put in one word, but maybe like your favorite thing that you learned, or like how you kind of see Trans Day of Visibility now. So just like a one word answer to create like a word cloud, and the words that we receive more than once will get bigger in it. It's kind of cool. Acceptance, that's a good one. We're getting some really good words. So I really liked eye-opening. I know like researching all of this was really eye-opening for me, as well as like I've never done anything like this before. Strong, courageous, those are great. Embracing, that's a good word. Ally, yeah, lots of resources to become an ally. Celebrating got big now. That's good. Pride, definitely, 100%. Courageous. Important. Yeah, this is definitely a super important topic we're talking about today, and so I've been so excited to have this little event. So everyone can find out some more information just like we could.
Are the words that are bigger, does that mean people like put it more than once?
Yeah. So the bigger words are have been sent in more than once. Resilient, I really like that word. Informative. Thanks, guys. I think we tried to be as informative as we possibly could. Oh, we're no longer accepting responses. Okay, sorry guys. I don't cool. But yeah, so here's our little word cloud of the day of the event. I think it's kind of cool, kind of interesting to see what everybody learned and how everybody kind of looks at Trans Day of Visibility. And I hope that people can continue to take these like thoughts and these words and continue to think about them as we go on, or like as you go through life, or if you ever wanted to learn more about transgender or anything like that, you can just think about this. It's kind of cool. Okay.
Thank you all so much for coming. We've enjoyed having you so much. And yeah, thank you for your input and making our beautiful word cloud, and y'all have a great day.